Welcome to week 5. I'm so happy you're here. We're going to talk now about the story of you and your imposter. Now, you're here because you're committed to growing. And I hope you see now that the most important way to grow is by learning to see things differently. For example, seeing your life from your whole heart and mind, from the sage presence, rather than just from the inner critic story of fear. Totally different. Any story told from that inner critic is going to be incomplete and false. And it's really being told by your imposter, because you're not who you are unless you're being your whole self, heart, mind, and body. So the inner critic is like a protective parasite, always less than who you are, and always telling the story of you being less than who you are. Often the inner critic just says, you're not good enough, which is an inexpensive way of saying, it's a more expensive way of saying you're bad. So here are this week's important distinctions. First of all, facts can be accurate or inaccurate, and truth is more complex. Truth involves facts, but also goes to the meaning of the story you tell about those facts, like, are they good or bad? Now, what meanings do you think the inner critic will give your story? Being good or bad is a way of seeing, not reality. As Shakespeare said, there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. We associate good with experiences that are or lead to peace, love, joy, and abundance. We associate bad with experiences or behavior that cause or lead to pain and suffering. I suggest we drop the labels good and bad, because we don't know what anything will lead to ultimately. So here's a story that demonstrates that. It's the story of the farmer and the stallion. So once there was a farmer who had a beloved stallion, and all the people said, hey, this is a beautiful animal. How about if you enter it into the county fair and maybe you'll get first prize? So he does, and the stallion gets first prize, which is wonderful. All the townspeople come and say, isn't this fantastic? Your stallion has gotten first prize. Now everyone knows that your stallion is so wonderful and it'll be worth a whole lot more. And the old farmer says, well, who's to say what is good and what is bad? Townspeople kind of go, well, that was kind of weird, right? Anyway, so of course that night, the thieves in the town hear about this amazing stallion. Guess what? They come steal it. They take it away, and all the townspeople come and say, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. What a terrible thing has befallen you. Now your son has no horse to work your fields. You had this amazing horse, and now it's gone. This is a terrible thing that's happened to you. And the old farmer says, who's to say what is good and what is bad? People are even more confused. This is clearly a bad thing. Anyway, the stallion is very spirited and doesn't really like these guys. The thieves, they're not good to him. He decides one night, he finds a way, he breaks out, he heads back to his beloved farmer. Along the way, of course, all the mares who notice him are going to follow him because he's amazing, good looking, powerful. So he comes back home and he's lined up to eat, and the farmer and his son look and go, well, okay. So they quickly feed these animals and close the gate. And now all the townspeople come and they say, this is so fantastic. You have even more abundance than you did before. And the old farmer says, who's to say what is good and what's bad? This week, this farmer's son is trying to tame the wild horses. He's breaking them in. He's riding one. It throws him. He breaks his leg. Of course, all the townspeople come and say, this is such a terrible thing that's happened. Oh my gosh. Now, what will you do? Your son's leg is broken. Lamenting and lamenting. And of course, the old Zen farmer still says, who's to say what is good and what is bad? The next month, the king's army comes by and they take away all the young men except for the farmer's son. He had a broken leg. So that story is particularly telling because you think it's good, but then it leads to bad. And you think that's bad, but then it leads to good. So who's to say what is good and what is bad? Let me give you another story that's a little more poignant. If you know the story of Christopher Reeves, he was Cornellian, so I'm fond of that. Yay, go Big Red. I was at Cornell for a while, got my undergrad there. And he was one of the dropouts, which usually more successful from Cornell, at least a few. He was Superman, right? And in the course of his life, he was also someone who rode horses. He got thrown from a horse and was paralyzed from the neck down. So this was a terrible tragedy. Towards the end of his life, an interviewer asked him, "What would you change about your life?" And Mr. Reeves, oddly enough, said, "Nothing. I wouldn't change anything." You're saying you wouldn't change the fact that you are crippled from the neck down? He said, "You know, I am so committed to my purpose of helping people not suffer in the way that I have suffered. So looking forward, I know even beyond my life, people won't have the same experiences I had. And I'm so dedicated to that cause that it just makes me happy. And you know what? I'm setting an example for my children that I'm so proud of because they see me, how focused I am, how intense I am to serve in this way." So he says, "You know, I can't imagine being happier if this hadn't happened." So this is amazing, right? Because we listen to this story and our minds instantly go, you know, that's a terrible thing. Well, guess what? What really defined Christopher Reeve's story wasn't what happened to him, but how he responded to it. And with the farmer, what the townspeople judged as good could be just as problematic as what they judged as bad. You know, when the stallion winning happened, well, that was good. But if you get attached to that goodness as how things are, it just makes the loss even more bad when the thieves steal the stallion. So it's better to just enjoy the beautiful gifts of life without grasping onto them and endure the painful parts of life without resisting. Judgment causes us trouble because if we judge something bad, we are victims. If we judge something good, we become attached to that. You know, you put someone on a pedestal, pretty soon they're always going to get knocked down. So this week, I want you to explore the following question for yourself. As you go through the week, you're doing your PQ reps, ask yourself, what's the story that I have in my head right now about me? And then follow up with this. Who's telling the story of me right now? Is it judgment from the inner critic, the imposter? Or is it a wholehearted and clear-minded story of reality and myself as it is? This, I think, will be a really powerful practice, and I'll remind you a little bit throughout the week, but have a fantastic week and welcome again. You've begun week 5 by watching this, and I look forward to seeing you in practice.